us a sec. And it does appear that we're live.
I welcome everyone. I call the March 2021 meeting of the Albany Public Library Board of Trustees to order. Thank you everyone for watching. I'd like to give the floor briefly to Rebecca Del Gaizo, who will explain how making a comment works.
Good evening, everybody. If anybody would like to make a public comment, we ask that you email to publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org, publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. Any public comments received at this email will be read during this part and the final part of the meeting. So far, we have not received any public comments.
Thank you. I'd like to state who is present. We should have all trustees present tonight. We are currently waiting for we should have all trustees except for Jenna Patera, who won't be able to make it tonight. She is excused, and we expect that Dr. Brenda Robinson will be joining us shortly. All right, so the first item on our agenda is to go into executive session. Scott, were you going to explain our reason for going into executive session? Did I hear just now?
I think Becky had it. What was there? What did we say?
Looking for a first and second for a motion to enter into executive session to discuss matters related to the collective bargaining agreement and matters related to job responsibilities.
Yes, sorry. We're looking for a first and a second to go into executive session for the reasons Rebecca said.
I'll move, Matt. This is Sarah Dallas.
Matthew, the second topic we need to rephrase. Job responsibilities isn't a proper topic. I think that really is matters relating to the appointment of a particular individual or person.
Rebecca, are you retyping that?
Yeah, matters related to the appointment of a particular individual
Or person.
or person. Okay.
So I would ask Trustee Dallas, are you still going forward with the motion on that?
I will go. I will move the amended motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Secretary. Here we go. So we need to go into executive session. I understand this was arranged by a separate Zoom room.
Yeah, we're all going to get put in a breakout room.
So in the meantime, there will be anybody who is watching the live stream will notice that it's a blank screen or a placard will be up stating that we're in executive session. And when the conversation ends and we vote to come back out of executive session, we will resume the Zoom meeting, but the Zoom meeting will remain up live during that time.
Thank you.
Is Melanie going to be in the executive session as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Both Adam and Melanie.
Yep, no problem.
And hey, this is Tom. I have two accounts on right now. I'm going to use the one that I'm currently talking on. Thank you.
Okay. Arlene, please state your vote.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
And I'm in, sorry.
Yes, for Brenda, I'm here.
Hey,
Thank
Brenda.
you. Brigitte, please state your vote.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
And when we go into the breakout rooms, it will ask you to accept going into the room. So just so everybody is aware, you will have to click to go into the room.
Thank you. Going in.
Hello.
Hello.
Tom, where is your headshot from
I know
in
that.
your other account?
Like Sarah's too.
I does it have like string lights in the background?
I don't know. Is that string lights? I thought it was. I can't. It's blue in
I
the
be-
background.
Yeah, I think that is Montreal.
Oh, okay. Good shot.
And Melanie, you should recognize the background of mine.
Yeah, well, is it the Washington, because it's the previous painting.
I watched that photo shoot happen, Sarah.
You did?
Yeah, you were right outside my window.
That's hilarious.
And I got a call like, oh my God, people are taking pictures in the front. What's going on? And I looked out front and I'm like, that's someone, working on their campaign. It's a good thing. But staff were like, they didn't understand why someone was getting having photos done in the front of the library.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, I thought it was. When I saw yours, I laughed because I do remember that moment.
It's very glamorous. I like it. So now that we're back from executive session, here we are. We would be looking, do we have a consent agenda? Yes. So now we're at the consent agenda. Does anybody want to remove any items to set aside and discuss in the consent agenda?
I just wanted to point out that under the minutes, 4.1, it includes not only the minutes, there's a link to the full board minutes, but there's also a PDF included that includes the budget session minutes. So both sets, both meetings minutes are included. It's just, you can only include one each way.
Very clever, thank you. So hearing no move to set anything aside, I'd like to get a motion for us to accept the consent agenda, please.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Moved by Tom, second.
A second.
Thank you, Arlene, so much. And now we can open the floor for questions before we vote. Are there any questions before we vote? Or comments? Hearing none, I recommend that we go vote.
Yes.
Yes.
We're voting.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and motion carries with all present voting yes. So the consent agenda has been accepted. Now we're going to go into the finance portion, and will Adam be walking us through the treasurer's report?
Sure. In the interest of time, I'll keep it pretty brief here. I think the main thing to note is that there is a new column. It says final budget modified. So that is the budget modification that was discussed at the last meeting. So all the numbers are put up against that modified budget. Expense-wise, there's really only a couple lines that are trending a bit high for the month of January, which is what these reports are for. Employee benefits was a little high. Deductible reimbursement costs were a big reason for that. maintenance service contracts. A lot of our maintenance contracts are still on the January through December calendar years. So that is why that number is so high this month, or January. I think everything else is pretty straightforward. The balance sheet's fairly straightforward. There were a couple of capital fund transactions, but again, I mean, the report is pretty basic. So unless anyone has any questions on any of those, I'm happy to move on.
Okay, hearing no questions or comments. These are not voting items, correct? You're just sharing these with us. All righty. So that would send us right into committee and liaison reports. Trustees reporting out, and I have to say I don't have anything, I don't think. Unless I drove somewhere by accident and didn't know about it, like I just did. So does anybody else have anything to share? Alrighty, hearing no share outs from trustees, let's go to the Upper Hudson Library System Liaison Report. Arlene, did you want to just give us a brief summary of last month's meeting?
Yes, I'll be pretty quick. We've got some good news. The anticipated 20% budget reduction that they were anticipated did not happen. It turned out to be 7.5% reduction. And so the system was able to restore staff salaries and services. That budget was approved unanimously by the Board of Trustees. And I'll just say that the organization has been extremely active in terms of its services. Its adult and outreach department has been doing, amazing work. We've learned that the system applied for the payroll protection program loan through the Small Business Administration, and they were they were waiting to hear back on that. But in brief, the organization has been very active. The anti-racism task force held its first learning circle last month, and they're preparing this month to launch an intensive staff development program. They've been reaching out to prisons to identify services that they might need. The Youth and Family Department held its first virtual workshop for its summer reading program, and they've got 18 libraries preparing to do story walks, 30 story walks. So all in all, the organization has been very busy. They asked us to put June 9th on hold for our virtual annual celebration. And more information will be coming out about that. They will be looking for recommendations for awards, but again, details about that will be forthcoming.
Not Brenda, sorry, I see Brenda's face. Arlene, you're not in my scope of pictures. May I make just 2 comments? Thank you for this great news. I think what is happening is systems are getting 20% that was held back from last year's budget. The way the state does the budget is a little different. So libraries systems are starting to get the 20%, which should impact some of APL's funding. And I think the 7.5 is the governor's suggestion in reduction in the next year's salary for, not salary, the next year's budget for 2021. Does that make sense?
Well, okay, so there's mixed stuff going on here because yes, they did get monies that have been held back. And that's what's allowing them to move forward in terms of the restoration of salaries, being able to do retroactive payments and restoring services. But the other thing, the other good news was that instead of looking at a 20% reduction in their budget for 2021, they're not going to have to do that.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it, Arlene.
Okay.
Did anyone else have any questions or comments about the Upper Hudson Library System, or comments or questions for our liaison?
Thank you, Arlene, for that report.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Arlene. The next committee up is the Executive Committee. So we met to discuss a few items which were gathered here in the minutes. So we talked about some business that's kind of been on our plates. And I am not able to see because I'm half blind and I need to be reminded of what we did. So we worked a lot. We discussed, I don't want to say, we had a lot of discussion around the roles and the job descriptions of what executive committee members do, what executives on the board do. We are working on, and this falls on me, creating a document similar to the Mighty Finance Committee and Personnel Committee's documents that show kind of what the committee does with the timeline. And I need to go back and flesh that out some more for the executive committee. We also talked about how the executive committee fits into the strategic plan. And we, let's see, board member expectations, which is kind of the overall discussion, kind of centered on executive roles and board member roles. So the document that we're going to come up with, and that really I'm going to be doing and running by the committee to make sure I got everything correct, is part of what Secretary Strong talks about as institutional memory. So we're creating something. We have elections coming up. The board has changes, and we're creating something that all of the committees are creating these documents so that people kind of understand what each group, what each committee does and what roles are. And that was basically the long and the short of it. Any comments, any questions about this committee's meeting? Anybody from the executive committee want to chime in? You don't have to.
So what we submitted has been accepted by the executive board, the documents? Or you just reviewed them?
We reviewed them, and I tacitly felt like we were accepting them. Like I wasn't going to go back to any of the other committees and say, okay, this, you have to change this and you have to put a comma here or anything like that. I felt like the executive, all the different committees were adults and doing what they needed to do, and they looked great. Is there something that, would you guys like to see, like a process where the executive committee just shoots out a thing that says approved, we love this?
Yeah, I believe that we had some discussion in the personnel committee.
Mm-hmm.
And we were waiting for the executive board to see if we were going in the right direction.
Oh, all
But
right.
if we are, it can always be reviewed again next year.
Sure. And Karen, did you want to chime in on that? I mean, I felt like we were really happy with what was created by the other committees. And I feel like what I need to do is model what I'm doing for executive on what the other committees have done, because it's really good.
Well, in particular was the first one. Thank you, Sarah. And that was the model really for everybody else. And we talked at the meeting about how, this is great that we're doing this and we'll accept them tacitly. And then just, everyone can improve upon them as they get updated every year. The only thing we thought maybe we might look at to add is looking at the strategic plan, because there are some things in the strategic plan, I don't think for personnel specifically, but for some committees, and that might be important to include because the board still has a few things in the plan that are not completed.
Thank you. Yes, that's clearer than the way I said it, or if I even said it. But yes, thank you.
Matthew, I know we have another executive committee meeting coming up on Friday. Do you mind just shooting us, the other members on the executive committee, a quick to-do list? I'm looking at this and I remember that I think we were supposed to continue work on our officer roles and descriptions and bring those to the next meeting. I'm looking at the other bullets and I'm not sure if we assigned them to people, but if you could send out an agenda and to-do items that we know to come prepared with, that would be really helpful.
That's a great idea. And what I'll do is put it in kind of a shared document that if anybody else on the committee thinks of things they want to put in, they can go right ahead. I'll get it started and we'll have it going for the meeting.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you bringing that up, Sarah.
Yes. Any other comments, questions about executive committee? Okay, hearing none, we can roll right into the director's report.
I'll discuss COVID-19 and some of the things that are going on later when we do kind of a pandemic operations plan update. So live virtual program series continue to be popular. Actually, the majority of our programs seem to get full sign up and often have waiting lists. It's pretty amazing how popular that programming has become. Tutoring has expanded to 2 additional days per week. This is the tutoring we do with the School of Pharmacy, so we rely on their students in order to expand it. APL has provided access to space at the Washington Avenue branch for the APD to resume car seat installations, which is a long-standing tradition that we've provided. And then we did 2 well-received podcasts. One about our creative curbside exhibition, which also got some Times Union, a Times Union article on it, and one on political extremism in America. And they seem to be fairly popular. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on them. Operations Human Resources is just extremely, extremely busy with the changing laws. Things have gotten better though. We have a lot less staff in quarantine at this point, which was really creating a lot of work for that staff. We are finally getting our solar panels to put on top of the Howe branch, which was part of a DLD grant. CMS reports an uptick in the number of young adult and juvenile e-content holds and usage. So kids are starting to use ebooks more and more. And then the exterior Wi-Fi has been installed and activated at Washington Avenue, Arbor Hill, West Hill, joining Delaware and Bach. And this was underwritten by our foundation. And that's where we got the wonderful picture at the top of the report of someone using our Wi-Fi. Administration, just, I'm taking this time to fit in as much training as possible. I was part of NYLA's Advocacy Day. I did not, because of an emergency, I did not make it to Breslin's virtual office, but I was a part of the presentation to Fahey and McDonald, and we talked about really pandemic operations. We planned it out. I spoke just about how amazing the staff were at all the libraries in the system and the way they pivoted and created new services. Continuing ed, a lot of training just around human resources, and really the impact of the pandemic, particularly on women and women of color, because that's something that keeps coming up in our conversation. So I want some training on it, and attended some great training on it to just kind of help me get a full 360 perspective on it. Statistics, February circulation did drop by 4% compared to the previous month. However, it was 15% higher than average monthly circulation during the pandemic. Circulation transactions remained flat, which was interesting. So doing a little bit of a deep dive, we realized that e-material made up a lot of that drop in our circulation. So our physical circulation continued, but our ebook circulation dropped for one reason or another. Originally, we thought it was weather, but it wasn't. Program participation increased by 42%. And Wi-Fi saw a 12% increase, which we think is just putting the new access points out there. Some of the, not only have we really been kind of promoting that service, but the foundation has done a great job of promoting that service as well. And, we're still below the average sessions by about 20%, but we're, I think, doing really well considering the pandemic. And then reference transactions remained flat. They were just extremely popular. And I'll open the floor up to questions, concerns, and insights.
Scott, I don't remember if it was in the report last month or not. Are you guys able to do anything with tax services this year? Was there a decision made on that?
So we were not. The organizations that we use, which are volunteer driven, we're not willing to bring volunteers into a building. So what we have done is we have good communication with the United Way of the Capital Region. They are doing some tax prep. So what we're doing is we're sending them to the United Way for those individuals who need tax prep. Tax forms we're providing, and we're doing that through, well, now we're doing it by appointment, but we're also doing it by curbside as well, or head count, which we're now also doing this week. So slowly rolling out services. So the tax forms we're getting in people's hands. The one-on-one tax service, which we did in a partnership, that's being covered by the United Way, but we're definitely going to bring that back next year.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
I'm all good, Matthew, if we want to move to informational items.
Great. So I was just giving a nice long pause in case anyone wanted to add anything. And Scott is going to go through some informational items with us. Thank you.
And there's some new items and some updates. So petition reduction, the state law, and Sarah, thank you for staying on top of this, and Bob for staying on top of this. You beat out our system director by about an hour in terms of the speed in which we received stuff. So we did also get this from UHLS as well. So a lot of trust and confirmation. So this bill A5456 will reduce the amount of signatures needed to run for the Board of Trustees to 25 in the current cycle. So it's important to remind everybody in the current cycle, because that may change next year when it's a little easier to do petitions. I know I signed a petition this weekend from a distance with masks, and the person had multiple pens that they switched out. Without this bill, it should be noted that the amount of signatures required would have been above 2,000. And the reason for that is the fantastic turnout for the last election. But that is something that the board needs to take into consideration in the future when we're working on board recruitment, that we're probably going to see a relatively high amount of signatures possibly needed next year. Bob's making a face like he doesn't necessarily agree. What was that? You're on mute.
I think you said 200.
200, right?
Oh, it was 200?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so I'm off zero.
There's just an extra zero.
Okay. So, but still, 200
that's
is a lot.
That's 4 times what you usually have to get.
Yep. So then the next thing is CDTA agreements. Just note that we have 3 agreements with CDTA. They are up for renewal. The first would be the Universal Access Agreement. This is the underwriting of ridership of staff for staff. That's done at a reduced rate, which is paid by APL. And this is for staff to travel using CDTA using the bus pass system. The second would be the Navigator Sales Agreement, which is how we make some income selling and replenishing Navigator passes. And then the third would be the license agreement for the space in the basement that Cycle uses. All of these agreements will be shared with you as soon as we get them back from legal for you to look at for the next board meeting. They'll be added as new business, but we're hoping that the board will vote on them. We're not looking to make any substantial changes. Then the next item is Department of Library Development and IMLS Studies Annual Report, or the state report as we call it. This is in as an informational item. I know the board in the past wanted some time to look at it, so you have some time to look at it. And this will be a new business item at the next board meeting. And also a little bit of a shout out to Melanie and also Adam, our Human Resources Department. They all have to take a lot of time to get all of this information together. Becky too. This year we had all of the trustees' information correct. Usually we run into issues with having it correct. So a shout out to Becky as well for following up and getting that information. Then the next is just a memo that we will create once a month, which is a snapshot of pandemic library services across Albany County and within the system. This kind of just gives you an idea of where APL stands in terms of other libraries and their services. Last month, we were kind of in the norm. This month, we're kind of leading the way. We're a little bit outside of the norm. Because we're allowing some people into our building, we're doing by appointment service. I know that there are some libraries now, and this will probably change, hopefully, that are actually saying they are not going to open the services until all of their staff are vaccinated, which was really interesting to hear in a DA meeting. So I think we're moving forward. I think the next snapshot next month will show that we're definitely leading the way in terms of services. Then the next information item is Stephen Winters, and this again is going to be new business next month. Stephen Winters, we've talked about him in the past, a really well-respected member of the community who suddenly passed away this January. There are members of the community who are looking for us to, Stephen was big on benches and was not happy when we got rid of the benches in front of Hal when we did the branch improvement project. And in a discussion, we thought it would be nice that maybe we dedicate one of the benches in the park area to Stephen. He was involved in so many organizations, but he really was a booster, not just for the Albany Public Library, but also the Hal branch in particular. He lived on Second. So there are some letters of support. And again, I'm looking forward to the conversation next month on that. Then some not so great news or information. We're having a real issue with parking at our Pine Hills branch. There's an attached memo that outlines some of the issues that we've been having. When we did the branch improvement project, there was, from what I understand, a handshake agreement because I am not finding any paperwork on it. Maybe Bob has an idea, but the police department and the staff remember that the Albany Public Library was allowing the police in off hours to park along the back fence. That over the years has developed into parking everywhere, and that has developed into parking during operational hours. We, before the pandemic, kind of reached out to the police department, did not get a lot of traction there about parking there. Nothing changed. During the pandemic, we were kind of busy, had our hands full. However, during one of the last snowstorms in December, the entire Center Station decided to park their cruisers in our parking lot with no reach out to me. And everybody has my number. They put all their cruisers in our parking lot, and then our staff the next day were unable to plow the parking lot in order to get access. Again, I reached out, had a conversation with the deputy commissioner, had a conversation with the captain in charge of the station, thought things were going to get better, started to see less parking in the parking lot. We had planned to reach out to them again when we reached by appointment or head count services. However, during by appointment services, a police cruiser actually was blocking the driveway. And a member of the public came in and complained and said they had a hard time getting into the building. Staff went out and spoke with the officer twice, and the officer was not as compliant as we wished they had been. I have reached out to the Center Street Station again, had a conversation with the captain. We were told that that would not happen again, but we are seeing some parking of private vehicles from the police force still in our lot. I wanted to put it on the board's radar because now it's getting in the political waters. So some of you hear from the police department about this. We're thinking about reaching out again this time to command and just saying, this is an issue, it's not being resolved. And, our staff didn't want to do an incident report. They didn't want names on the incident report. They were a little nervous about us reporting it to the board. There's a concern that if we don't allow the police to park in our parking lot, they're not going to respond to some of our behavior calls. It's definitely a tricky situation. And then last but not least, second to last but not least, community report. This year, the video is going to be primarily a presentation piece for the community, a video that will be played. I will try to, Karen, I'm sorry, you had your hands up.
Yeah, I was wondering about the petition.
I'm sorry.
Really good to know that it was only 200. That was a little.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Put an extra 0 on.
Based on, I mean, Bob knows this. Is that based on the number of people who voted for library trustee, or because it's usually the budget for the library, but we didn't have one this year.
Right. It's the turnout at the school district election last year. We can't hear you, Karen.
Okay, how about now?
Yep.
Okay, so was it based on the school budget vote or our vote or just the whole?
The school election turnout from the absentee ballots last June.
Okay. Right, thanks.
Bob, this is Sarah. Would it be different if the library held its own vote versus tying in with the school district vote in the school?
It depends on what the turnout would be. I mean, obviously, it's 2% of the turnout of the vote. If the library were holding its own votes and didn't have the same turnout that the school district had, it would be 2% of that. But this year, the bill doesn't have anything to do with 2%. It's 25 for everybody.
No, I understand that, but it might be something to look forward to or look into moving forward, having it held in the library rather than with the school district. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of history as to why that isn't the case. So we could talk about that, but I don't think you want to get into it tonight. Usually the number's about 57 or 58 signatures that are necessary.
Is the school district planning on having the election in person at their normal polling sites?
I haven't heard anything to the contrary. At May 18th is when they're scheduled to have it. As of right now, the executive order that allows for absentee voting has not been extended as far as the school elections. So right now they'd have to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Sarah, I know in the past with the joint votes, we've actually gotten more people voting for the library budget than have voted for the school budget, even though it's happening at the same time.
Rebecca, I think you want to stop sharing your screen.
So one thing I will say, Sarah, is that I'm afraid to make points anymore. I am uncomfortable when school, and I've felt this way my whole career. I am uncomfortable. I think it's, and no offense to anybody, I think it's less democratic when libraries run their public votes within their building. And that was the feeling with Albany, with our, when the votes were discussed, and that has always been, I'll stay on record, and I don't think Bob can change my opinion on that, though I don't think he's in agreement with me. I'm not comfortable with us running our own vote, just because I'm someone who believes election day, every election should be on the same day, and everybody should be automatically registered and should make voting as easy as possible, where when libraries host their own votes, I don't know if that's easing access for voters.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next is the community report. We're working on a video to present. We will share it with this group the next board meeting, and we're also working on a list to share what neighborhood association meetings we will be at that you will be able to attend if you choose to attend. The idea is that we're going to play the video, and then someone from staff, usually me, sometimes other people in leadership on evenings that I cannot make it, they will be there to answer questions, but the video will be the presentation itself. And then last but not least, just proposed future agenda items, an update on the strategic plan from Melanie, a community report presentation. Again, we're going to just show you the video, hopefully a vote on the annual report, or at least moving it to unfinished business. The CDTA Universal Access Agreement renewal, again, that'll be new business. We hope to have it voted on, but can be moved to unfinished. CDTA Navigator Agreement renewal, and the CDTA Cycle User Agreement renewal. Our hope is to not wait till the next board packet, but to actually send everything to everyone ahead of time.
Hey, Scott, on the DLD annual report on page 5, under number 5, you've got an extra figure, or extra digit in the budget. I don't know which one it is. I think it's an extra 2.
Okay, we will definitely review that.
Can you repeat that, Bob?
Page 5, annual report, item number 5, the annual budget has an extra digit in it. I think it's an extra number 2, but I could be wrong.
There's one more thing under the minimum standards, and I don't think we want to do a variance. It says no to public restrooms.
This is something I asked several times. I was supposed to do as of December 31st, 2020. And at that time, we did not have public restrooms available to the public.
Yeah, they did that, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. That's also why our computers are down to 8 instead of our couple hundred computers, because at the time when we were open at that time, we only had 8 computers available to the public.
Too bad January through March don't count.
The annual report, as usual, was cumbersome, but this year even more difficult. We did get some help from who's the staff member at UHLS? Jonna. So we did get some help from Jonna, and we're not the only library that is struggling with some of the answers. I will say this is the first year we got our draft in before the deadline, and that was a goal of ours. So I think that's the first time in 5 years that we've done that. So
we had multiple questions that were dependent on, because they always tell us to answer as of the last day of the reporting year. And I said, well, that was going to be vastly different for many of the things because of the pandemic. They took it not only to DLD itself, but they ended up taking it to IMLS and asking, because some of these were stuff that has to get reported out to IMLS. So these were all, answers were all approved by those 2 governing boards.
And that's it. I'll open the floor up to any questions about information items.
Thank you for doing this, Scott. It's very helpful to see it in print. And it really does a nice job supplementing the minutes. So thank you and your staff for this work.
Thank you. Karen, you had a comment or concern?
Well, yeah, and I agree. I really do appreciate the informational items and getting the heads up. It is really helpful. For the agreements, are they going to be redlined, or will you have a memo like you typically do, just showing the differences?
It's going to be very easy this year because I don't think there's going to be huge differences.
Okay. Super.
So, but yes, we got late to start on it, and then we waited on our friends over at CDTA to get it over to us. I had hoped to have this as new business at this meeting, but that didn't happen. The stars didn't align, or the buses didn't align correctly.
Right. Thank you.
All right, so hearing no further questions or comments for the executive director, we could move on to agenda item 9.1, purchasing policy, purchasing expenditures policy, which I remember discussing at a previous meeting. Here it is.
So yeah, this was what was brought to the board previously. We just did not have the corrected document. So we have in memo form what the changes were. We brought those out, but you do have the red line version. And I apologize. I have no idea why in a Microsoft document, when you try to redline a table, it makes it in blue. I have no idea why it did that, but it did. So the changes in the table for the purchasing limits for the two lower limits of the purchasing limit are in blue rather than red.
No, as I recall, this was something we were not going to vote on this time, or no?
I believe we're planning on voting on this one.
And it's been moved already by the committee to vote on?
Both the finance and P&G.
Oh, wow. It's moved and seconded. No, just kidding. The committees have moved it to the floor, so we're looking for a second. We all had a chance to discuss this in our last meeting and take a look at the changes in the new board packet. So I would like to get a second from the floor to approve the newly updated purchasing and expenditures policy. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. And now we're going to open the floor to any further discussion before we vote.
Actually, sorry, point of order, maybe Bob knows. Does it have to be seconded by someone who isn't on either committee, or at least the committee who proposed it?
Possibly, yes.
I don't think you have to be that formal, but that
Okay,
may be true
no
in
problem.
Robert's rules.
Ideally, yes. I forgot, I spaced on that. Should we ask for a second from a non-committee member?
I'll second it, but I thought if it comes from a committee, it doesn't need a second.
Yeah, that's the rule that I understood.
Okay, alrighty then. So we're going to vote. Are there any, is there any further discussion before we vote? Hearing none, I would like to recommend that we go to our board docs and vote, or do a voice vote.
I vote yes, Brenda.
Did we lose Arlene?
I think we did.
It's possible. I mean, She might have been, she told us she might actually be absent. So I would say if there's a way to mark it, not present, not voting.
Please
Sorry.
your vote. Brigitte?
I sent you a message, but yes.
Okay, sorry.
All right, that motion carries with all present voting yes. And that brings us to our famous budget vote. Now, I understood in some of my discussions, are we doing the tax cap override regardless?
That would be my advice to the board. Yes, Matthew.
Doing that, which I think, Bob, you've always suggested that we do that, and I agree with your rationale on that.
Although this year, I have to be honest with you, this is the first year where there is very, very little risk to you for two reasons. Number one is you've changed your fiscal year, which you all know that you did. And the second thing is Adam has done the calculation. And you not only have a levy increase allowance this year, but you have a carryover from last year. And so your tax cap levy limit this year is pretty substantial. It's I want to say 237,000. Is that right, Adam? Can't hear you, but
I don't have it in front of me, but
it's right in that name. I can pull it up if we need to. So anyway, the chances of there being a ministerial error of that magnitude is pretty low. So the reason you do the tax cap override, even when you don't intend to put a vote up that would trigger it, is so that in the event that there is an error, you can still collect your levy in the full amount and you're not docked for whatever the error is. Because if you don't override and there's an error, you'll have to reserve the mistakenly collected amount.
And just speaking personally, I like that it's there in the off chance that we end up needing it, even though we probably won't.
And there's, other than the, I suppose there's some optics to it that people can be concerned about. Other than that, there's really no downside. It's not affecting any other aspect of your operation.
Okay.
So I would like to know what the tax cap is. I mean, it's exciting because it's the first time we've even been able to have it at this point, because usually we can't even get it because of our.
Okay, just give me a second and I will put it up. Somebody's going to need to give me permission to share. Okay. Should be able to see it?
Yes.
Okay, so either Adam or I could walk you through what this form is doing and how it works. I know it's a little hard to see. If you don't need to see the top information where it has Adam's contact, I should be able to get it all on one screen here for you. That's the nuts and bolts of it. So would the board like one of us to walk you through it?
I would say
yes.
Adam, you want to do the honors since you did the form?
Well, there's actually not. They actually changed how the form was done this year on the website. It was all very self-explanatory. It was just a series of yes or no questions. So I barely did. I don't know that I did any manual calculations at all for this.
The first section, okay, is basically having you put in data that shows what your limit was in the past. Okay, it then has you take out any adjustments, and of course you don't see any adjustments there because none of them applied. You then take out exclusions, which those 4 exclusions don't apply to you this year because you didn't have any controlling events. You take the total levy that's above 9.1, you subtract it from the 2022 proposed levy, which is the 8.8, and that gives you the difference. That's the amount that you could go up to. And so I had that number wrong. It's 292,626. That does include the line from the available carryover, which is right here. This is the carryover from 2021. And so this year plus that amount is the total tax cap levy limit for this year for the library. I don't know what that equates to in terms of percentage. Obviously, we could back it out.
3.3%.
Yep.
Got a lot of math wizards today, or calculators or something like that. And that's helpful. I found myself looking not so much at every check mark as you went through, but I realized, oh, we can look at just that bottom for each section. So that was good. Does anybody have any questions about it? All right, hearing no questions or comments, any further questions or comments, we should consider putting a vote on the floor to approve a tax cap override. And once we get a motion on the floor, we'll have one more chance for discussion, okay? So can we get a motion to approve a tax cap override?
A motion.
Thank you, Vivi Cryer. So moved. And do we have a second? Thank you, Sarah Dallas. It's a tough crowd tonight. Now is our chance, our last chance before we vote to have any discussion about this tax cap override. Go. Hearing none, I recommend that we go to our board docs and vote or do a voice vote.
Brigitte, unfortunately I have to have your verbal vote. I can't do one in a chat. I'm so sorry.
Brenda.
Yes.
Thank you. And Brenda, I also noted that you said yes. Thank you so much.
And the motion does carry, I believe, with yes, 5 voting yes, 2 abstaining, sorry, 5 voting yes, 2 voting no, and 1 not present for voting of the trustees present.
It actually does not carry, Matthew, because it has to be passed by 60%.
60%, okay. There we go. So so that's shot down. There's no tax cap override.
Right. The tax cap based on that vote has not been overridden.
All right. So that's how the cookie crumbled on that one. Okay. Great. So we shall move forward. Now we are going to look at the tax levy and vote to approve that. So would someone like to walk us through that real quick?
I don't know what the board's preference is. I didn't see a final number on budget, but you have to do the budget first.
Oh, budget, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just spaced. I'm getting tired already. Okay, so we have to approve the budget. And who will be walking us through the budget?
Do we need to walk through the budget?
If anyone would like that. We've already seen it several times, had a special meeting about it. Would anyone, does anybody
Yeah,
have-
I would say we probably don't need to walk through, but if anybody has any questions.
Great, questions and concerns about the budget? Or concerns?
I have one. At the special budget meeting at the end of February, when Scott talked about the reduction in part-time staff salaries, could you repeat what you said at that time, Scott?
Sure. I think that the board needs to understand that because there's a reduction there, we may need to have a conversation moving into the future about the hours in which we're open. Staffing line always impacts how many hours we're going to be open. So for right now, we believe that we can operate, especially with reduced scheduling. But when we start to open up more and more, we're going to need to have a conversation about hours. We usually do anyway, but this will definitely be a component of that.
Thanks. I'm just a little disappointed that that idea was not represented to the finance committee, to my recollection, until 2 weeks ago at the full board. But I'm always willing to have a conversation. So thank you for repeating that.
Tom, I do remember bringing it up the first time we presented this budget. And I'm not sure it's in the memo, but I did bring it up before the last meeting. But if I didn't, I apologize. I'll look back. But that's always been my concern with this particular budget line.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments, concerns about the budget?
I just want to add that I feel although I'm concerned about library hours, I feel right now, because there's so much uncertainty this year about when we can be open because of the pandemic and branches and staff, it's sort of, I hope that whatever is we figure out for 2021, 2022, isn't necessarily going to last forever. It's temporary, and that obviously the board sets the hours, so that needs to be a conversation over time.
I bring it up only because I don't want it to be a surprise when we have that conversation.
Yeah, no, it's good. Perfect.
Yeah. So I'll take a couple more moments here if any other questions, comments, or concerns come to mind. Hearing none, we should move to the voting phase. Can we get a motion on the floor to approve the budget?
I think the finance committee put it forward.
Oh, all right.
I
Now,
think, but I'm not sure.
Does anyone know? Was this a committee moved piece? Okay.
If you don't have a report pushing it forward, just get a motion in a second. Let's not mess with something that's important.
So this is huge. So let's just put a motion on the floor.
I move.
Thank you. From finance. Thank you. And can we get a second?
A second.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions? I'm going to take a shorter wait time because we just had some. All right, I recommend, hearing none, I recommend that we vote either by board docs or by voice.
I vote yes.
And this one does carry. I, I don't have to do a percentage. All present have voted yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the next motion's not necessary because as I understood what just happened with that budget is you did not change the tax levy year over year.
That sounds like what just happened. Yes.
So there's no need to approve a tax levy resolution.
Correct. So shall we strike that? Okay, thank you. Election.
I just had a question. Maybe Bob can address this. The debt service portion of the tax levy did change. It did actually increase. Does that?
Oh, that was approved in 2005 when the voters approved the project.
Okay. Yep. That's what I thought. Just checking. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. So the next item up is the election notice. So Scott had addressed this a little bit before. Bob did a lot of work, and I'm sure other people did too. I see Karen's signature here. We have all the materials together for the elections, and we now know that the candidates will be needing only to gather 25 signatures to get on the ballot. I had a discussion with Scott where we talked about like how are we going to market this, and Scott had some great ideas about marketing it through library websites and through the community, the neighborhood association meetings that he and we will be presenting at. And I recall that that's how I got my first petitions, was Scott came to a neighborhood association where I was, and that's how I got them. Scott, did you want to add anything to those ideas?
No, I mean, I think there's some different ways that we can really deliver the petitions to people, including now that services are more open. I mean, people can come in the library and pick them up, but we're more than willing to mail them to the library. We're more than willing to send them in digital copies as well. And what we probably will do is make them available for the community report meetings in a digital PDF format that we can provide a link for people to download them in those meetings. But, you know, as things are going and as services open up, it will be easier to get petitions in people's hands. But if for some reason the numbers go crazy in the next few weeks, which they shouldn't because of the metric we use, we can still do curbside or by appointment.
Great. So we will be moving on this resolution that everyone has on their board docs to go ahead and do the election as described. Correct? Yes. And we should get a motion on the floor and a second, and then we can have a discussion phase.
I'll move.
Thank you. Moved by Karen Strong.
Second.
Seconded. Whoops, I got Tom's voice before I saw Sarah waving. Thank you. Seconded by Tom. Now, this is the time when we can have a discussion before we vote. Here's the actual wording of the motion. And I'm going to just take some time out, a little bit of a wait time, so in case anybody wants to have any discussion before we vote. Hearing no comments, concerns, or questions, I recommend that we place our votes.
I vote yes.
And that carries by all members present. Resolution carries unanimously. And then we have some items to discuss about the actual election process and how that's going to work. This is the time in the meeting where I should say, which I told the executive committee, that I won't be running for re-election. And so there will be a seat open and there'll be some shifts in the executive committee after the elections. So it came as a surprise to me that I was on the, I was supposed to be the, and I think this is an error on our part, but I was marked as the chair for the nominating committee, which shouldn't be if I was running, but I have just recently made the decision that I'm not running. So there you go. Here we are. So I'm kind of trying to get it all pulled together for the next crew.
And I'll say it publicly too, that my term is also up and I am not running again. So both seats are fully open.
So we all have access to these documents. Are there any, I don't think there's any voting for those for the candidate petition and instructions. Are there any questions, comments, concerns about the candidate petition and instructions? Actually, I went old school again and I printed a lot of this stuff out because I was like, I gotta get this together. So I think I'm okay with it. Hearing no questions, comments, concerns about 10.5, we can move to the quarterly board evaluations. We have just gone over 2 hours. So we did collect these in a Google survey. I could send everybody a spreadsheet of the Google survey, or you can log in and if the person that made the form, you can look at it this way. So with Rebecca's help, we did screenshots of what the person who made the form would see. Unless anybody really wants to go over all the items, I think in the interest of time, this is here for you to look at. Rebecca is kind of scrolling through. The results were generally pretty positive, which is nice. And let's see. And Sarah actually does need to go, so we're kind of losing people as we go. So I would recommend, if you want to look at this further, and if you have any comments about it, we can do that by email. And this is here for you to look at. There's a couple of things where we need improvement. All right, is everybody okay moving on? And I know Brenda, Dr. Robinson has to go. We're losing our doctor. That's dangerous. There's no doctor in the house when Brenda leaves. So do we have any other voting items before everybody bails? Or these are just informational things that those of us who are here can?
Well, we usually vote on the pandemic operation plan, but there are no changes to the pandemic, no suggested changes to the pandemic operation plan.
Oh, so this time we wouldn't be.
No.
Okay, great. So it sounds like the trustees who have to go, it's you don't have any further voting responsibility, so that's great. And we can move to Scott's pandemic operation plan if he wants to address anything in that, although there were no changes.
Sure. So we're not asking for any changes to the POP or the COSP. We think we're doing pretty well there. We always like to remind everybody it's important that the library may enter a phase, but we may not be able to provide all the services because of organizational capacity. This most recent phase was tougher because we hadn't reached it before. So it took us a little bit of time to get the spaces kind of moved around, staff trained and prepared and ready to be in the building. So just a timeline, we had a suspension of redundancy scheduling on the 1st of this month, which is great. That means all of our staff are reporting to the building. A reduction in material quarantine to 48 hours, which was suggested by the Upper Hudson Library System. Browsing of physical collections inside the branches at Arbor Hill, West Hill, Bach, Delaware, Howe, and Pine Hills. That started on 3/8. Opening of the Washington Avenue branch for curbside. That's projected for Monday. The opening of the Bach and Delaware branches for in-building appointment. That started on the 8th. And expanding appointment services on building capacity at Arbor Hill, West Hill, Howe, and Pine Hills. That started on the 8th as well. So really happy with the progress and how quickly we've been moving along. It's interesting to have full staff in the buildings. We're operating, we're happy. And I think the public, as they start to use us more and more, will get accustomed to it. There is some patron feedback. It was a conversation. Usually we don't share anything related to Facebook or Nextdoor. There's really one ongoing thread on Facebook and an ongoing thread on Nextdoor. But because I'm on Nextdoor and I do an update there, I actually reached out to this patron in their thread. So they emailed me back. Their concerns to me were a little lessened than the ones on Nextdoor. The person actually was fairly supportive. So I just sent back the information and they replied very nicely to it. Again, I would say that on average for every one email that we get about that we should be open more, we get about 2 to 3 comments or feedback that we're doing the right thing. So I know everybody in the community has varied expectations of us. And I know that we'll be spending the next year working on, getting the public to understand what we did over the year and what we're going to do moving forward. But again, even the somewhat pushback that we've gotten in the end has been somewhat positive. I did have a member of the foundation reach out to Matthew, who then I had a conversation with. They did not know that an email was shared with the board from a member of the public that they were concerned wasn't being heard. But that's an email that I think can be read back in January or February. So there was an email shared with the board. The response was shared with the board as well. And that member of the public has yet to reach out to me again. What I have told this member of the foundation who is concerned that please give my phone number, give my email. I am now doing public Zoom meetings. So on Thursday afternoons, I am available for the public to just kind of pop into the Zoom room that I'm sitting in. We like when they make appointments, but I'm probably just going to have Zoom running in the background. We absolutely want feedback. We absolutely want members of the public reaching out to us, even if it's concerns about the pandemic operation plan. I do know that some concern that was voiced to me is that we have a very complicated plan. Again, Stephanie and her staff do a fantastic job of breaking that plan down for the public and releasing it in emails, e-notes, blog posts, and things of that nature. We're big on sharing everything, but we definitely craft a good watered down message. But for operating a library in a pandemic, I don't think a 40-page document is out of the question. And I think it's something that, again, has been replicated by multiple libraries throughout the state. Just had a call from Sarah's off the call, so I could say I just had a call from Saratoga for them saying that they're using our plan as kind of a draft or an outline for their plan, and they had some questions. So again, if members of the public think we have an overly complicated plan, please show them the other documentation that's on our website. But always, I want to hear from the public. And they can reach out to me, and it doesn't have to be nice. They can be brutally honest with me. Sometimes they do. And I absolutely love engaging and having those conversations. I can't give them the answer that they want because they want us to be open, and I understand that, but I can at least help them understand the process. I often invite people to just watch our board meetings in this part of our board meeting.
Great. Thank you for all that work, Scott. Did anybody have any comments or questions about the POP?
Tom, I know that you had received some feedback from the public. Have you considered to receive that feedback?
I have not heard as strongly over the last month. You're referring to the feedback about Washington Avenue being closed.
Yes.
So the folks I heard that from, I know they still feel the same way, but I have not heard additional feedback. Yeah. And I think people are starting to catch on that it's going to be opening for curbside soon, so that will help.
Karen, I will be checking to see if you guys start picking up holds at Washington Avenue instead of Delaware.
I have a library aficionado, so
Yes.
Okay,
good.
And she can go herself. She'll be very pleased. And I'm delighted that we're at the levels that we are, just for public health reasons, and also since it allows the library to open more. And I just, again, want to commend you, Scott, and your team for creating such a solid plan, which we adopted the first one a year ago this month, days before we had to shut it down. And all that pre-planning and all that thinking made all those decisions that much easier for us. And I just appreciate all that work and stress and effort, and that is now benefiting the other libraries across the state. So,
and I will say, and if you ask anybody, I do give this board a tremendous amount of credit, because some of this work was easy to do because this board was much more supportive than most boards across the state. I think some of that is you, Karen, and your background in science. I think some of that is Dr. Robinson and her background in public health. I just think that this board should really take credit for our pandemic operation plan, because you are very much responsible for it. We wouldn't have been able to do that work if we were still trying to make the case that, we needed to reduce services the way we did. And a lot of libraries in March and April were doing that, and this team was already putting everything together. I will say, and I just want to follow this up because this feels like we're kind of doing a little bit of a celebrating, and I think we should be celebrating, but I will warn the board that, and I've said this entire time, that we may have to revisit the plan in the fall. And I just want this board to kind of understand that, just like, when we came out of the pause last time, I told everybody we're probably going to go back into a pause later on. And Karen, you were in agreement on that. Again, I think the pandemic is over, but I do believe the health crisis that we're currently in will probably, I hope I'm wrong on this one, and I'm becoming more and more optimistic, but I do see that this fall we're really going to have to keep our eye on things.
Well, it's all greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for everybody. And are there any other comments or questions or concerns for Scott before we move on?
No, I just wanted to say that everything that everyone else said, but I also enjoy the book club as well as the trivia, and your staff that facilitates that event is just, I can't, their names escape me right now, but they're just, full of fun and just make you want to come back and do it again. And I really enjoy it. So thank you.
I will pass that along. I think they're very proud of the work they're doing, and I think they're enjoying doing it the way they're doing it.
That's great. Thank you so much, everybody. And so we're going with that. We're going to move on to the second public comment opportunity.
We have not received any public comment.
Oh, okay. I thought there were millions watching. Okay, thank you so much, Rebecca. And I'm going to ask for a motion from the floor to adjourn the meeting.
I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second. Oh, Thomas McCarthy. Okay, thank you. And I recommend that we vote.
And if it's possible for Karen, Tom, Scott, and Bob to stay on after we stop streaming, maybe we can avoid a doodle poll and try to figure out our finance committee next week. That'd be great after adjournment.
That would be awesome.
Those doodle polls. I mean, but still. All right, so motion carries with all present voting to adjourn. Thank you so much. So if Melanie is here, I think we can turn on.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Becky, can you
Good
turn me
night.
back to host? Please.
And I will let you decide on when that meeting is, and I will do my darndest to be there as well, so we can figure this out. Good night, everybody.
Oh,
Good night, Matt.
Matthew.
Good night,
Oh,
Matt.
Matthew, if you want to be there,
It's
for you,
gone.
it has to be after 4:30.
He's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah, usually 4:30 is good.
He can attend
Okay.
4:30, sometimes 4, but he's usually walking or driving. So 4:30 and after is best for Mr. Finn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before we get into scheduling, I just want to know.
okay, 1 second.